Hey guys, I'm back. I'm ready to answer some of the questions that you had. I wanted to say thank you to everybody who sent one in. I know a couple of you had more than one. That's cool. I'm going to answer them in as much detail as I can without trying to make this video too long. Alright, so let's get started. First question. What is your favorite genre to write? It's actually harder than it sounds. If you had asked me a couple of years ago what my favorite genre was, I probably would have said supernatural fiction. But, you know, all my stories have an aspect of romance in them, and I really enjoy developing relationships between characters, so it's probably going to have to be romance, you know? Can't really steer away from it. Next question. Your style of writing in the first character, but also multiple characters throughout the book, is unique. What motivated you to write this way, and does it ever get confusing and cause you to mess up? So what probably motivated me to write in the first character is the intimacy that you get with being in the first person. You're inside the character's head. You can get a first-hand experience of their thoughts and emotions. So for me, I really like, you know, being able to get in the mindset. It really helps me to develop the character when I'm experiencing myself what they are firsthand. So it also doesn't get confusing when I do it with multiple characters. It's actually really helpful in that way because I can switch between, you know, one mindset to another and get into this character. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, it doesn't really get too confusing for me. Next question. I think I saw a tat during your video. Can you do a show and tell on it? Sure. I've got a couple. I got this one on my wrist here that says patience one way and devotion another way. They're just two qualities that I really believe in every aspect of life. Obviously, got this big one here, so I'll go ahead and show you that. You know, I love writing so much that I really wanted something to represent my love of fiction. So, you know, I got a book down here, and everything is kind of exploding out of it. You know, I got a boat, octopus for the ocean, a mountain with some forests, werewolf, obviously, you guys know how I feel about werewolves, astronaut, some planets, and galaxies there. So, you know, really just as a representation for me of how fiction can bring your imagination to life. Yeah, that's that one. I have another one on my wrist that's about the size of my hand, but I won't show it because nobody asked. Next question. Do you always plan to be so engaged with your readers? Yeah, absolutely. Ever since I wanted to be a writer, I definitely wanted to be the kind of writer who sort of had a really personal relationship with my readers. I always wanted you guys to feel like you could come to me, contact me if you ever had any questions, or even if you just wanted to say hi or, you know, give me feedback. You know, I feel like it's a lot easier for you guys to do that if you know that I'm available to you. So yeah, definitely I always wanted to be the kind of writer that had a good relationship with my readers. What do you think your next project will be? I've only found a few writers that I like their sequels as much as their first, and Spirit was actually very different from Phantoms, which made it interesting and not very predictable. Will you write a third and keep it unique and maybe add a bit more smut? I lumped these two questions together because they're sort of connected. My next project will definitely be the next in the werewolf series. I'm definitely gonna write a third, and yeah, it will be a unique plot. It's not gonna be connected to the first two in any way, obviously besides the characters and continuing the relationships and whatnot. I know you guys really missed Luna in the second book, so I'm definitely bringing her back. I kind of missed her as well, so you'll see more of her. And yeah, there will absolutely be more smut. Not as much as Interference or Karen Docs of Daylight. Those two kind of have their fair share of sex in them, but you know, given the fact that Camille and Kyle will be a little older in the next book, I'm thinking of setting it about a year after the end of Phantoms. So, you know, they'll be more established in their relationship physically and emotionally. So, yeah, definitely you'll be getting some more smut in that. Where did the title come from for Sea Dad? Charon actually in Greek mythology is the ferryman who takes people across the river into the world of the dead. So I was trying to be clever and you know, say Charon docks at daylight, which, you know, daylight obviously is when the pharaohs are most active. It's the most dangerous time in the world of Sea Dad. So you know, kind of like Charon's coming to ferry the dead that come in the daytime and take them away to the underworld. Let's see here. Are any of the characters based off people you know or knew? I actually try to steer clear of that in my writing. You know, every once in a while I'll take an aspect maybe of a person or an experience that somebody I know has had. But generally I don't base characters off of people that I know. As far as looks go, I might describe them in a certain way to kind of embody an actor or actress that I thought might fit the part. But other than that, yeah, I really don't use people that I know in real life. Where did the idea for Charon stem from, and how different is the actual story from what you had originally planned? Actually, you know, the story came from the fact that I had always wanted to do a romantic relationship that started out as rivals. And I really just thought that kind of a zombie world would be a good platform for that. And when I start a story, I never really know how it's going to end or where it's going to go. I sort of develop the characters and let them take it where they want. So I really hadn't had an ending in mind when I started Charon. So it turned out pretty different than I had originally planned. I hadn't planned much, but yeah, it sort of developed into something else entirely. I really don't know how to describe it, you know. I wanted Dugan and Kara to end up at the camp eventually. I wanted them to have to relocate and sort of build an establishment that was more permanent. That's where the base came in. But really, that was about it. So it turned out pretty different. Yeah. Any plans to publish Sea Dad? It's possible. I kind of wanted to keep free fiction on Fiction Press for you guys, just kind of let you know you're appreciated. But Charon's kind of a little bit of a rough draft. You know, I edited it as much as I could, but still a little rough around the edges. So there's a possibility that I might go back and run through all the chapters, maybe cut out some of the dead weight and edit a little bit more, refine it, and maybe put a better, you know, better version up for sale. Yeah, it's possible. What kind of dog is Wolf if you had a breed in mind? I kind of imagined Wolf would be a bit of a mutt. I described him as looking wolf-like. I don't know if you've watched Game of Thrones, but the dogs that they use as the dire wolves in Game of Thrones, they're called Northern Inuit dogs. So if I had to pick a breed for Wolf, it probably would be that. They look really wolf-like, and they're big, you know, big dogs. So that's probably what I would say Wolf is. Does the virus not affect animals? No, I hadn't imagined that the virus would, just because of the nature of the parasite and how it feeds off of the chemicals in the human brain. That would be really interesting to explore, though. Maybe in a sequel or something. Obviously, the parasite's capable of evolving, you know, to survive. So that would be really interesting to explore, to see if it could evolve into, you know, surviving in a non-human host. Who is your favorite side character in Sea Dad and overall stories? In C-Dad, my favorite side character, I'm not counting Kara. She's pretty much a main character, but I'm gonna have to say Mal might be my favorite side character. I actually wish that I had introduced her a little bit sooner so I could develop her a little more. You know, maybe in the one-shots I will do that if I ever get to do some set after Karen ended, but yeah, I think Mal was my favorite from C-Dad. Across all my stories, I think Luna's my favorite, just because she's kind of out there, you know, she says whatever the hell she wants, and you know, she really doesn't hold back, and she's pretty funny, and you know, personally, I don't think I'm very funny. I'm pretty calculated and reserved verbally, so it's always fun for me to write characters like Luna, and you know, I kind of surprise myself with whatever, you know, turns up on the page. So I think Luna or characters like Luna is probably my favorite side characters across all the stories. Random, but I wanted to know, what's Jed's story? Jed's story. Well, obviously his brother Murph had a drug problem, and that's something that if I had developed Jed's backstory, would have carried over into the outbreak. So you know, he had the addiction before the parasite ever came into play. I think after the outbreak, Jed, you know, obviously cared about Murph. He was really defensive over his brother. I think after the outbreak, you know, he kind of saw the power that drugs had over people who used them, and you know, he kind of developed that as a weapon to survive in the post-outbreak world. You know, it's sort of hinted at that the people who followed him were users, and you know, obviously there's the scene with Echo. He used it to manipulate her. So really, his story, you know, was just doing whatever he had to do to survive and protect his brother, and that happened to be the way that he saw fit and the way that he thought he would have the most control. And yeah, I think it just kind of slipped away from him a little bit. I don't think when he started out he thought he would be such a bad guy, such a villain, but that's pretty much where that led him. So that's Jed's backstory. What the hell happened that got Echo and Jensbro more civil toward each other? I think the chapter that, you know, Micah tries to kill Echo and Genevieve defends Echo and pretty much threatens her brother, was what did it for him. You know, obviously Genevieve had been saying ever since Micah came back into the picture that she wasn't going to choose between them. But in that moment, Micah makes her choose, and she chooses Echo. So, you know, obviously Micah has been separated from Genevieve for years. You know, he loves her as his sister. He's glad to be reunited. And I think it's that moment he really realizes that he can't have Genevieve without Echo. So, you know, for him, Genevieve made her choice, and he kind of has to relent and kind of get over it just like Genevieve had to. So, you know, obviously there's still a little bit of tension. That scene where, you know, Echo recommends a book to him towards the end, I think, you know, he's trying to put it aside, and he, you know, he's into books. He's a smart kid. He likes to read. So I think, you know, he did get to forget about that tension between them for a minute, and then, you know, when they notice that Genevieve and everyone else is watching them, they sort of get awkward again and go back to that tension. But yeah, I think definitely there's a relationship developing between them. So, you know, maybe in one shot set afterward, we'll get to see them become a little more friendly. Who knows? Once you mentioned writing about things you actually know, like hockey. You wrote about military structure, so I was just curious if you've had experience or maybe grew up with a military family or just did basic research. Yeah, for CDAD, my girlfriend's actually in the Army, so I used a lot of what I already knew about, you know, structure, the ranking system. I used that for Karen Docs at Daylight. And then any other questions I had, like about the military vehicles or anything like that, I either asked her specific questions or I did research. And I always do research. With CDAD, the bit about the electric fences, I actually did about 2 hours of research for that. And you might think that sounds a little bit excessive, but you know, whenever you're reading something, if you know what that author's writing about, you know details, and they get something wrong, it sort of pulls you out of what you're reading. You know, I've heard that physics students can't really watch action movies because they think all the stunts are off, and when I watch movies with any aspect of the military in them with my girlfriend, you know, she's always saying like, oh, his hair's too long, that's out of regulation. So, you know, even something as small as an out of regulation haircut can really pull you out of what you're experiencing. And I never want that to happen with you guys. I always want you guys to be as immersed as possible in the story that I'm telling. So even with minor things like that, I always try to fact check as much as possible, just so that, you know, if you guys have a lot of experience with what I'm writing about, you know, you know, you're in the story and it doesn't play you out. Imogen always seemed like she was hiding some really heavy baggage. Was she? Yes. In chapter 38, she's having a conversation with Echo outside, and she sort of implies that she was taken by raiders. And then in chapter 44, they talk about it again, and she confirms that she was taken by a handful of raiders, and Ty and her brother Cyrus, you know, had to rescue her. So that's sort of her baggage. I'll sort of let you speculate about what happened to her there. You know, I never confirmed it or anything, but, you know, definitely couldn't have been an easy thing for her to experience. So yeah, Imogen did have some baggage. Another question I have is, did you ever have a plan for what happened to Dugan's wife after she left, why she left and all? Yeah, actually, when I was thinking about doing possibly a sequel for CDAD, I had wanted to involve Dugan's wife in that. After she left Dugan, she, you know, went with that group that they met, and I had imagined that things, you know, with the parasite evolving and the ferals getting smarter, that the world outside would be getting pretty wild. And, you know, obviously Genevieve and her group have this base with electric fences and they're pretty secure, but everyone outside, I had imagined, would sort of have to become as wild as the ferals themselves just to survive in that environment. So I thought it would be cool to involve Dugan's wife in life outside of a wall, and sort of see where she was after the fact with her group and everything. As far as why she left, you know, in Dugan's flashbacks, you know, he's traveling with his wife and daughter, and his wife Trish tells him not to take his eyes off of their daughter, and you know, they're running from ferals, and in that moment he's worried about her. He takes his eyes off their daughter and she gets bit. So you know, obviously there's that, and then he didn't have the strength to be the one to kill his daughter so that she wouldn't turn, and Trish had to do it herself. So I think there was, you know, some resentment, obviously. And after the fact, she's, you know, she's angry and she's a little bit cold with him. So, you know, I think, you know, even though she loves him, you know, that's something that's going to take years to heal from. And I think, you know, she just wanted to leave before it got worse. Maybe she was too cold, and he started resenting her back. So, you know, I think she kind of figured she needed to do this on her own and kind of leave before, you know, their relationship turned sour. So, last question. Did you ever seriously consider killing off Echo? Alright, here's what happened with Echo. From the beginning of the story, I knew that Echo was going to get bit, and possibly survive. So I had set up pretty much the entire story. Her character development was going to peak when she sacrificed herself for Genevieve. And then somewhere, I believe it was around chapter maybe 47 or so, I was kind of thinking about where this story was going, and and I was like, I have to kill Echo for real. But you know, previously she was gonna get bit by a hunter and survive, and that's how they were gonna find out that the hunters weren't contagious. But how it worked out with Jed and everything, they sort of discovered that, you know, prior to Echo getting bit, and so yeah, I decided around chapter 47 that I was gonna kill her, and I did, and you know, obviously you guys were pretty heartbroken over it. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do as an author, was killing Echo. In chapter 56, I believe it was, that she died. So and then I wrote chapter 57, and you know, while I was writing it, that was a hard chapter for me to write. It was after the fact, and she was gone, and it just didn't feel the same anymore. You know, I sort of felt like I had killed the hope for the story. And then, you know, reading your guys' reviews as well, you know, a couple of you said it just felt empty, you know, after she was gone, and there wasn't really anything to keep living for, which it was good for chapter 57, you know, because you guys and me as well were feeling the way Genevieve was feeling, you know, that sort of empty, just heartbroken, nothing to live for. You know, so that worked out alright for chapter 57, but it was pretty much after I wrote that chapter that I decided I couldn't keep her dead, you know. It wasn't a good way to end the story, and yeah, so I brought her back, and I guess the lesson here is trust your first instinct when you're writing. Don't kill everyone's favorite character. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's all the questions that you guys had. Obviously, feel free to ever message me or anything like that if you have another question. If it's something that merits a long enough response, I'm not above making another video. So just let me know. Thanks for watching.